All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking and beyond at this hour. According to the latest reports that are coming in from Ukraine, it appears that the battle for Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, is presently underway. Now, according to reporters who are stationed on the ground in the Ukrainian capital, it's being reported that there's gunfire that is being heard from near government buildings in Kiev. This is the latest bit of information that has in fact come in. Remember, the invasion into Ukraine began by Russia yesterday morning, in the wee hours of the morning, and since then, the Russian military has made its advancements. There have been missile strikes in several crucial areas across Ukraine. Russia, through its military airstrikes, has gone about systematically dismantling the military infrastructure of Ukraine. And according to the latest that we are getting, it's being said that there are clashes that are presently underway outside of the Kievan borders. Meanwhile, the Western allies have raised an alarm over the Russian invasion, with nations saying that Moscow is actually targeting the Ukrainian government. The American Secretary of State Antony Blinken has told media that the United States is pretty much convinced in its mind that Russia is seeking to overthrow the Ukrainian government. The Blinken predicts that the Ukrainians will strongly resist Putin's efforts to usurp their sovereignty.
Part of the Russian plan has been to put Kyiv in danger, to assault the capital, to go after other major cities. We're seeing forces come in from the north, from the east, from the south, and that's all part of the plan that we've laid out for the world in recent weeks. One of the things that Vladimir Putin has done, starting back in 2014 when they first went into Ukraine, seizing Crimea, seizing a part of eastern Ukraine, is to totally alienate the Ukrainian people from Russia. Before 2014, actually, Russia was pretty popular in Ukraine. It had a 70% favorability rating. Right now, it's exactly the opposite, more than the opposite. 90% of Ukrainians now, if I can use the word, detest Russia and certainly detest President Putin. My prediction would be that one way or another, they will strongly resist any effort to take away their sovereignty, take away their independence, take away their government.
Meanwhile, the British Defence Minister Wallace has confirmed that the United Kingdom views that Russia intends to invade into the whole of Ukraine and that Russia has not taken any of its major objectives. Ben Wallace has also estimated that Russia at this point of time may have lost as many as about 450 personnel. Meanwhile, the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian has accused Russia's President Vladimir Putin of trying to destroy Ukraine's statehood. France has also warned that the security of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is at risk. Now, France has said that the EU wants to dry up Russia's finances and to cut all links between Moscow and all global financial systems. All right, now to get us the latest in terms of how Europe, of course, has been responding to the crisis in Ukraine, we're joined in by our correspondent Ross Cullen, who's joining us live from Paris on this. Now, Ross, we've been looking at the developments that have been taking place in Ukraine thick and fast. The Western nations, the United States and its allies in Europe, have tried to ratchet up the sanctions that they are imposing on Russia, but that seems to have had very little impact on the Russian war machine that has rolled into Ukraine.
Sanctions which act immediately, like switching off Russia from SWIFT, and there are sanctions which have a cumulative effect, like sanctions on
European Champions League final, so the showpiece event for European club soccer, is going to be held in Paris this year. It was meant to be held in St. Petersburg, but FIFA and UEFA have been acting to try to strip Russia's second city of its chance to host the showpiece event by moving it to Paris in response to what we see as the sporting world's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Also further complications because there are World Cup qualifiers still to be played involving Russia, Ukraine and other European nations like Poland and Scotland as well, coming up for the World Cup in later this year in November in Qatar. So the sporting world is still trying to come to terms with how they can ensure the safety of players, fans and officials, and how they can maybe react to show that they are also standing up to Russian aggression. So just a word to start with, breaking news. This city, Paris, is going to be hosting this year's Champions League final for the men's tournament, meant to be held in St. Petersburg, Russia's second city. That has been stripped now from Russia and is going to be awarded instead to France, with Paris hosting that. Talking of the overall French response, you mentioned Jean-Yves Le Drian in the introduction. The French foreign minister has said that he believes the safety and security of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky could be at risk, and France stands ready to help the president if needs be. But the president has said he will remain in Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, for the time being, to try to show that the government can continue in Ukraine in the face of this Russian aggression, this Russian invasion. And you mentioned the sanctions as well. Another overnight mammoth summit, emergency council meeting of all the 27 European Union leaders, and they agreed to a sanctions package of $1.3 billion in support from the EU to Ukraine, to go with trying to hit Russia in the transport sector, energy sector, in terms of visas, exports, and also finance, with trying to shut Russia off from as much of the global financial system as possible. Stated aim of the French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire. He is convening European Union finance ministers right now in Paris to try to ensure accord between all the 27 different nations on the financial aspect of the sanctions. This is the second sanctions package. Remember, the first one was announced here in Paris 3 days ago when we had the first Russian aggression, the independence recognition of those two eastern Ukrainian states, and now the latest from the European Union is this second sanctions package.
Very interesting. But the fact of the matter, Ross, is despite the diplomacy that we witnessed, in which Emmanuel Macron was front and center to try and make Vladimir Putin see some reason, the fact is the Russian war machine is in Ukraine and fighting is presently underway on the outskirts of Kiev. Now, one of the issues with Europe and its response to this entire crisis has been the lack of unity in the response against Russian aggression. Can the different countries in Europe come together with a cohesive response, even in terms of financial sanctions? For instance, unless energy-related sanctions are put in place, which would also hurt Europe, Russia is unlikely to feel any pain in terms of the cost that it is incurring for having carried out this aggression.
Well, the first sanctions package, which was announced on Wednesday, and now we have the second sanctions package. As you state, as we can see, the Russian invasion continues inside Ukraine. No immediate effect, no immediate response. And again, the European Union leaders calling on Russia to immediately cease the war and immediately start to remove its military infrastructure from inside Ukraine. One thing that has been noticeable in the weeks leading up to what we are currently seeing inside Ukraine, if you're hearing from the United States or the United Kingdom or the European Union or NATO, they have all been singing from pretty much the same hymn sheet in terms of the massive consequences, the severe costs that will be impacting Russia if there was further Russian aggression against Ukraine, particularly in terms of sanctions. We've seen the European response on Wednesday, the European response this morning in the very early hours of the morning, about 3 a.m. Local time in Brussels, was the news conference, which Emmanuel Macron was there, along with Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. So we have seen this unity from the Western powers to try to show that they are willing to stand up to Russia. It remains to be seen, though, if there is going to be an impact on Russia from these sanctions, severe enough to try to curtail Russia's military incursion into Ukraine. At the moment, that's what we are seeing. There is still an invasion in Ukraine. There is still worries about the safety of even the president and the government. And that is what you mentioned earlier, the French foreign minister has alluded to. So here in Europe, they are trying to show that they are united, and they are trying to show what they have announced are very heavy consequences for Russia as a result of its invasion of Ukraine.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Ross Cullen, for joining us from Paris and getting us all those updates there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.